You've heard all these stories about people who are running small businesses and print farms and making tons of money. Well, much like yourselves, I've been hearing these stories for a long time, and I've been very interested in putting my 3D printers to work to make me more money. The theme of this video is not meant to be a tutorial for you to follow and try to set up your own 3D printing business, but more of a personal challenge to myself. You see, running a 3D printing YouTube channel is quite an experience, and it's not exactly the most lucrative one. So, as cameraman Beau and I are talking about the betterment and the future of the channel, we're realizing we're starting to run into some walls. We're wanting to put more money into the channel. However, we don't exactly have a lot of disposable income to work with because, well, much like yourselves, I'm sure, we're feeling the squeeze of how expensive everything's gotten. So, we've been putting our heads together and trying to think of how can we make more money for the YouTube channel to produce more and better content. The answer was staring us right in the face. Between the two of us, we have an army of 3D printers at our disposal and a lot of problems that could be solved with 3D printing. So, the challenge for this video is pretty straightforward. Basically, I'm assigning myself a budget. We are going to figure out a product to sell, and we're going to see how long it takes to make a profitable business by running one 3D printer. So the first part of the challenge is the overall budget. And for that, I thought that I needed to be really realistic. See, I didn't want to just use a 3D printer that I already had on hand or one that a company sent for free. We could have done that, but I didn't really feel like that was in the spirit of this. Plus, it was an excuse for me to buy a new machine. I gave myself a budget of $500. And that feels like a really realistic budget for somebody who's looking to get into 3D printing. I feel like $500 is an amount of money. It's not exactly easy for people to come up with all the time, but it's a number that could be saved to in a relatively short amount of time for most folks. So we have a $500 budget, and we need to have a printer, filament, a product, and marketing. By crossing step one off the list, which was come up with a budget, that immediately pointed me towards a Bamboo A1 series printer. If I'm thinking real world, uptime, non-stop production environment, I want a printer that is easy to use. I want a printer that is simple, straightforward, very reliable, and I've had great luck with all of my Bamboo machines. I was left with two options, the A1 or the A1 Mini. With price and build volume both in mind, I decided to go for the A1. It felt like spending the extra money for the larger A1 made the most sense. And then I was faced with a difficult decision. Should I buy the AMS for it? Well, I already have an AMS Lite, and I don't get the most value out of it. However, I still wasn't sure exactly what product I wanted to sell. Do I want to sell decorative prints like dragons and things like that? Well, adding multicolor means that we can charge more and make them more unique, but it also adds complexity, wasted material, which is wasted money, which is going to hurt our budget and our bottom line. And also, I couldn't use, based off of the parameters I set for myself, I couldn't use the AMS Lite. See, I want everything for this challenge to be self-contained and exist only within the parameters of this challenge, which means any 3D printer that I already own and any filament that I already own are off limits. So, I opted to save the money and buy just the machine on its own. I didn't feel like there was enough value to add multicolor printing. The real saving grace would have been if I was doing large production runs of parts, having the filament automatic failover if I ran out. However, the machine will notify you. So if you run out of material while you're in the middle of a print, it's not the end of the world. It'll just be chilling, waiting for you to come back. So decided it was best to save the money and make sure that we had enough money for marketing and for filament and for an actual product to sell. We acquired a machine when that cost us $384. That leaves us with $116 total dollars left to figure out what are we going to sell, what are we going to print it with, and how are we going to market it. So the thought is, you see scrolling through TikTok and things, there's a lot of people who are selling really fun prints like the crystal dragons and other flexible toys, things like that. In my opinion, and from some research that I've done, that is not really super sustainable. Those are going to be more flash in the pan type things. As they're trendy, they're going to sell really, really well, and then they're going to drop off, and you're going to have to keep chasing those trends. If you want to come up with a product to sell that is going to have sustainability, you need to look beyond what's trendy. You need to look for something that is going to help solve problems for many people and maybe even has some repurchasability. Bonus points if it's something that would make a great gift or is very inexpensive. So we had to think about that, and that's when it hit us in the face. This summer, I've been playing a lot more golf than I ever have. And if you've been watching the channel for a couple of months, you may recall we did a video about 3D printed golf accessories. And from there, it was pretty easy to decide what we're going to start with. One of the things that we actually printed in that video was a T-clip. And this clip is designed to hold 3 golf tees on your hat. Now, I was inspired by somebody else who I will absolutely give credit to the original file for on my design for this. But all the dimensions and measurements and the entire design are my own. I actually designed this part from the ground up using theirs as a what would I do better. I didn't take dimensions from them. I didn't use their file to create my own. Our model didn't cost us anything because it was something that I designed. And while we didn't have to actually spend money to purchase the rights to sell a file, we do need to take my time into account because I had to spend time designing the product. We'll touch more on that later. But we need to think about our filament choice, which is our next budget obstacle to overcome. And when you're thinking about the filament choice for the product that you're designing and selling, or just selling, you have to be mindful of the use case of the product. If it's just a knickknack or a toy, then you're probably going to be fine to go with PLA. That's going to be your lowest cost, your highest accessibility, and your widest variety of color and texture options in terms of maybe you want glitter, maybe you want silk, maybe you want matte. You have a ton of variety with PLA. And when we look at our hat clip objectively, well, most people are going to be golfing outside. Where I live, golf is a summer activity, and in the summers in Ohio, you can have temperatures as low as 65 degrees, all the way up to 95 degrees that we've experienced this year and have actually gone out to play in. 95 degrees in direct sunlight is probably going to weaken PLA. The other thing that I wanted to keep in mind is when I'm not actively wearing my hat that I wear golfing, which is actually usually this owl hat because it was a gift and I like owls, my hat lives in my car. And your car in the summertime is going to get really hot. So we need something that's going to have higher temperature and more elasticity than PLA has to offer. PLA is great for its rigidity and its hardness, but it doesn't handle high temperature and flexibility well. This hat clip is going to be prone to needing flex because the way that you snap tees in and out of it. And a repeated action like that on PLA is going to soften and weaken it. That leads me to ABS, ASA, nylon, and PETG. All of those are going to be really solid options. See, when we did our original golf accessories video, I actually had some of these hat clips made up from PCB Way out of SLS carbon fiber reinforced nylon, and that's what I use daily when I'm on the course and absolutely love it. But that's not cost effective. Also, printing nylon at home is going to be expensive, tedious, and not necessarily worth it in this application. So we can rule nylon out, which is great because that's the most expensive of the filament options. That leaves us with ABS/ASA and PETG. And because we had to be mindful of the machine that we chose, that rules out ABS and ASA for me, and here's why. ABS and ASA both are going to print best in an enclosure where it's going to contain the fumes and minimize drafts to prevent warping. If you're having parts warp off the bed, your failure rate's going to go through the roof, which is again going to hurt your bottom line. So that leaves us with PETG. PETG is an amazing material because you can print with a lower temperature than you're going to need for ABS and ASA, and much like PLA, it doesn't require an enclosure. However, I don't love the look of a lot of PETGs for an application like this. They have that really glossy, plasticky feel. And I wanted to increase the rigidity. PLA is known for having some give. That's when we look at modifiers. And you can buy materials with all sorts of additives in them to make them suit an application even better. We've had some experience in the past with printing carbon fiber PETG, which went really, really well. And that's what I chose. For my experience in the past, and because of the price point, I chose Voxelab carbon fiber PETG in a midnight blue color. The reason that we wanted the carbon fiber additive is to add stiffness and rigidity and help the part to hold up. The other really cool thing that carbon fiber prints do, they tend to have some really, really good looking layer lines because the chopped fiber is going to actually help hide them. At $25 for a spool of this, I thought it was just perfect because it is a full kilogram. The carbon fiber gives it that matte look that I'm looking for, and the dark blue is going to look really good because it's almost black. So we're going to hold up to the heat, we're going to hold up to repeated wear and tear. The material's not overwhelmingly expensive, and it just fits the bill for what I need. That leaves us with an operating budget of $91 to get everything else up and running. Now is when we need to look at how are we going to sell and market this product. If you're anything like me, you spend untold hours a week just aimlessly scrolling through TikTok. And I've tried to sell a couple of products on Etsy in the past and didn't exactly have an operating budget to pay for ads. I feel like with the way that TikTok works and the algorithm, we decided TikTok is going to be the perfect platform because it has way more discoverability than Etsy. Over the last handful of years, from everything that I've been made aware of, Etsy is really ballooned with people who are doing drop shipping and things like that. I don't want to deal with that, and I'm sure TikTok is just the same. However, it's really not overall that difficult to reach organic, real people on the TikTok shop. The other thing is, with a product that is as small as a hat tee clip, you can reach people who are going to be looking to make impulse purchases regularly. So that is kind of what my target is. We need to set the price point of this thing really aggressive, so that way we're still making a profit, it's worth printing them, and it's worth running this business, but also so that way it's something that people can buy without thinking twice about. I don't know how many times I've sat with a product in my shopping cart online and just couldn't make myself pull the trigger. I don't want that. I want this to be a see it, want it, buy it now. As of the time of recording, we haven't actually started selling. I'm hoping to within the next week or so after this video goes live. I had to put a lot of focus and energy into making sure that I can make this little hat clip look really, really good. You have to be able to make good product photos, and you don't have to do anything absolutely wild to do so. The reality is you don't need access to a high-grade camera and professional photo editing software to make good product photos. I'm going to use my cell phone for all of these to prove that you can, because the best camera that you have is the one that you have with you, and if you don't have a camera, it's going to be your smartphone. Next step in starting our successful 3D printing enterprise is going to be how do we price our product appropriately? We need to make sure that we're not pricing ourselves out of the market, but we're not selling ourselves short. I know that these hat clips, based off of what Orca Slicer said, take about 3.75 grams of filament, and start to finish, including printer prep time, it takes just over 18 minutes to print one of them. If you factor in that we're using a $25 per kilo spool of filament, and you divide your print by it, that's going to tell you how much it costs you in just raw material to produce. And an easy way of doing this is Prusa actually has a print pricing calculator that's going to tell you how to price your prints. It's going to tell you what your overall expense is, and you're able to use it to assign things like how much labor does it take, so do I have to do any post-processing on these, what is my prep work like? And it's a really useful thing, especially when you're trying to figure out how to price and value your time. I plugged all of the information in for these hat clips into the Prusa pricing calculator, with the exception of charging for electricity. 3D printers as an individual unit don't consume a lot of power, especially not when you're not running up your print bed to crazy temperatures. Basically, based off of the fact that each one of these costs 10 cents to produce, that's based off of my filament price and the amount of filament used. I also added a 25% markup in material cost, and that's going to help me to offset the cost of failures and wear and tear on my nozzle. You have to take that into account as well, because when you're using something like a carbon fiber filled material, you're going to wear through nozzles a lot faster. It might be a good idea within the scope of this for me to go ahead and buy a hardened steel nozzle to use. We're at 12 cents per unit, and we need to come up with what is my time worth? Well, based off of kind of what I can make in an average month in my day job, I've determined that my hourly rate for me as a person is going to be right around $37.50. That's going to give me a few minutes of prep time and then start to work on optimizing my total cost. One of these clips should cost $6.37. And that doesn't feel like a great value to a consumer, but that's where you have the ability to kind of tweak things. I don't want to sell myself short, and I don't want to price this product out of the market. So I'm actually going to be selling these in multi-packs. I'm still working on determining how many and the end price. But based off of what my time is worth and what these prints should cost, $6.37 per one, I don't see a lot of value there for a customer. I think realistically, to make this a fair price, we should probably be looking at selling them more 3 for $12, where you're getting a decent price break for buying multiple, and that's actually going to bring the actual amount of time per unit down, because the printer only has to do the prep work once. So in a case where I can load up a print bed full of these, I'm actually leaving money on the table by printing only one at a time. And because of the way TikTok Shop operates, and you have a finite amount of time to get something shipped out, or else you're going to start incurring issues with your store, I feel like I need to load up a few print beds of these so that way I have several of them on hand. In the scope of this video, we're not even going to be considering fancy packaging or anything like that. We're going to keep it simple, we're going to keep it straightforward, and the whole goal is going to be to focus on the product itself. This video serves a couple of really important purposes for us. One, it is a challenge and a way for us to actually bring more revenue into the channel. We have a lot more content and ideas for things that we want to do, but are currently limited based off of our available income. And that's just due to the fact that we're a small and growing channel. See, most of the income that we have comes from ad revenue and channel members. And I do want to thank our level 3 channel members, Nathan Wolford and Snail 3D, for the support they have. You and all the channel members are what really make us able to do things like this. But a handful of channel members, which are much appreciated, and AdSense revenue is not enough for us to really grow on. The other thing that we're doing is we do have merch available at rtms.tech. Grab your sweet RTMS shirts and cups there. We need to bring more money into the channel because we want to grow this as a business and be able to do bigger and more fun things, and eventually be able to start bringing home paychecks from. The more primary objective is I really want to learn more about running a successful 3D printing business. You're going to have ups and downs, you're going to have failures, and the scope of this is we want to see how long does it take to go from a $500 budget and all the expenses to get started to a fully profitable business. Once the 3D printing company where we're producing a real product reaches profitability, that's when we can deem this project a success. I expect there to be hurdles and roadblocks, and it might not be a super quick thing, but we will provide regular updates as we're going through this process. It's going to take some actual dedication, and I'm going to have to really double down on making TikTok content, especially while it's nice outside and we can actually do some real content out on the golf. If you're interested in learning how long does it take to take a 3D printing business from idea to profitable, be sure you're subscribed, like the video, and share with a friend to make sure that you get notified and everybody sees what we're doing, because I want to bring as many people along for this journey as possible, because you might have a great idea, but you're apprehensive to start. And I want to encourage as many people as possible to get started.